Hey guys, what's up? This is Stock Retail coming back to you to talk about the Allegheny class action suit that we've all been tracking. Over the last few days, we got some of the filings. They're even up on AMC Investor Relations website now, so if you want to go look at those rather than listen to me talk about it, go for it. You know, I always say do your own DD. For those who would like, I'm going to share. I've gone through them a little bit, looked at what we're being told in the filings, and we're going to talk through what I see in those filings. We're also going to talk through a little bit of how to either support or object with regards to the settlement itself, talk through a little bit about timelines and just process, and then is there any kind of interesting news that we're seeing in these filings. Um, just interesting to me, side note for a lot of you, I think you know more that I have kind of a business background. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have a legal background. So this is a business guy's read through of these things. So far, for the most part, as I've read these through, I guess I've got an okay track record. I've been correct in my interpretation of some of the past filings. So that's good. But also, you're just going to want to double check for yourself. And then I'm having a bit of a laugh to myself because for me, what's more fun is talking through how the movies are doing, talking through my forecasts, but it just seems like maybe this is helping the community right now. So I'll keep doing this. I want to know this stuff, and I know some of you do too. So let's go ahead and go right through. Um, I'm just going to go kind of a little bit methodically here. I've taken a bunch of screenshots and I'll tell you what I see. It's like, I don't know if you've ever bought a house. I've had that happen to me a couple times. And you'll have this notary who's like going through just like hundreds of pages you got to sign. And it's really helpful when they're just like, okay, here's what's being told to you on this page. Here's what's being told to you on this page. So that's my attempt here. I'm going to show you these screenshots and just kind of talk through what I see. You can go see these for yourself. As usual, I'll provide some links and like I said, just maybe question a little because I'm not a lawyer, so I'm giving you kind of a business guy's take on what this says. So the first thing, um, you ought to know, especially to kind of be FUD proof, even the plaintiffs. So the plaintiffs are Allegheny and the I don't know, is it Munoz or whatever? There's actually kind of two cases that got brought together, but the lawyers for the people coming against um, this conversion of ape, basically they all admit, I should clarify there. They're not really coming against the conversion. They're uh, they're bringing a class action suit that says their class, and we'll talk about that in a minute, deserves some. I'll use a big word here: remuneration. They deserve something to come back to them, and we'll talk about what's the class and how does that all work. It's basically all of us. If you own AMC, you're part of the class. So anyway, even the plaintiffs who've kind of said perhaps they've accused AMC of doing some things incorrectly, let's say, even they are admitting that the preferred equity shares and APE themselves are valid. So you can see I'm reading the document actually from AMC's lawyers, so I'll just kind of be upfront about that. But you can see that there's going to be, because they've had to talk through the settlement between the two teams of lawyers, they kind of know what each other's going to say. And so here they say, for these reasons, blah, 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 as will be more explained in the plaintiff's brief in support of the settlement, any claim challenging the validity of the issuance of preferred shares, blah, 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 was unlikely to succeed. So both sides are saying, look, if we win all the way through this court case, APE is going to hold up. APE was valid. And I'll talk more about that too. And that showed up in the DD all the way through. It's something that I argued when this case first came to light. But we'll hit that more in a minute. Okay, so this resolves all claims. So that's going to kind of put this thing to bed. Kind of can't come back. So if the settlement is approved, this lawsuit is done. You just need to know that. And on all this, I'm not going to necessarily read you the document and the screenshots. So I suppose you could pause this, or you could like follow along and pull it up. It's a PDF on the Investor Relations website. Okay. I just want to confirm, and I'm going to pause on this topic for just a minute because I've seen a lot of misinformation on Twitter, at least. I think I've said on this channel quite a few times, I'm more of a Twitter ape, was later to YouTube. That's always been hilarious to me when people try to say that I came last fall. My YouTube got created last fall, but not my Twitter. Been here a long time. So, I've seen on Twitter a lot, and perhaps maybe some of you are on Telegram, some of you are on Reddit, some of you are on Facebook. So I don't know about your communities, but in the Twitter community, I've seen a lot of misinformation about how the reverse split's going to work. and basically what APE is going to be worth compared to AMC. So we just kind of continue to try to put that to bed and make sure everyone understands. So there's confirmation here, and you can kind of follow. If the proposed settlement's approved, then AMC will do this conversion and issue to record holders, the one for every 7.5, the AMC dividend. So let's go through that a little bit. I'll just share with you the sequence. And by the way, hang on tight, because we're going to also talk about how do you know if you're even going to get any of these AMC shares, and what's the difference between the class in the class action settlement and the people who will actually get the benefit of this dividend. We're going to talk through all that. It was in this filing, so I'm going to hit those points as well, so hang with me. But for anyone who just needs to see the sequence, and I'll show the math again in a minute here, the first thing that happens, let's say the settlement is approved. Now, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I'd like to think it will be approved, but let's just see what's going to happen. So let's just say in a scenario where the settlement is approved, then AMC is going to reverse split. And by the way, they put a lot of language in here about how quickly will they do all of this after the settlement. So I'm going to share that with you too. Okay, so how AMC will reverse split, so that's the 1 to 10. Now notice that's the AMC common shares. I'm not talking about APE yet. Then, after that reverse split, AMC common will have the settlement. It's really important you understand that's after the reverse split, because this 1 to 7.5 is against the reverse split shares, which is you've divided by 10 already at that point. So I'll show you that more clearly in a second here. So reverse split divided by 10, then the dividend basically is 1 for every 7.5 of those reverse split AMC shares. No fractionals, so I'll give you that visual in just a second to keep that simple. Then, after the AMC stuff is all cleaned up, it's first AMC and only AMC, the reverse split and the dividend from the settlement. Then, before APE converts, this was the thing that I clarified last week in a video, and it's a video I've demonetized. If you want to go see that and you just want kind of proof that this is all happening, I sourced all of that too. It's from their proxy filings. The preferred shares, so remember, preferred equity is actually worth 100 shares of AMC, but then they made an APE worth 1/100th of a preferred equity share, and that's how APE and AMC are 1 to 1. Just 100 divided by 100 is 1. So, but the preferred equity is going to change from worth 100 AMC to worth only 10 AMC, whereas APE is still worth 100th of a preferred equity. So in effect, what happens is APE gets divided by 10. Well, what are we having? A 1 to 10 reverse split, right? So that's how APE basically is reverse split. It's really kind of fine print language. So when APE converts, APE is actually going to be worth 0.1 AMC. That's just the 1 to 10. 1 divided by 10 is 0.1. So just keep thinking APE and AMC 1 to 1. That's the simplest way that I usually just say it. If AMC got divided by 10, APE gets divided by 10, they're staying 1 to 1. Just think of it like the old days. If you did any algebra or anything like that, and you're kind of solving for a variable, anything you do to the left side of the equation, you got to do to the right side. So if you divide AMC by 10 on the left side, you're dividing APE by 10 on the right side, and they stay kind of joined at the hip in that way. So then APE converts to AMC. So it'll all happen. It'll all happen quickly. I'll show you some language. I think I've got it in here that it seems that may actually happen on 2 days. But if I don't have that screenshot, I'd say remind me, but you're not with me to remind me. So hopefully my brain will remember to show you how that's happening on 2 days. We'll kind of come back to that. Okay, here was the math. I'm going to skip through the animation because this is on 2 other videos. If you want to see me talk this through in a little more detail, go to either the second video about the settlement, that's from a while back, that's demonetized, and then also a video from last week basically saying yes, APE is getting reverse split. That's also demonetized. I just really wanted apes to know this stuff. That was more important to me than getting a few bucks from some clicks or something. So, and let me clarify, it's only a few bucks. That part is accurate. Okay, so the math on the share settlement. What happens, you can see, let's go through this top row, and let's, this time, because it's the 3rd time I'm going through this slide, I'm just really going to fly by and not even talk price. We would have to have a whole other conversation around what do we think the market might do to price. So nothing on here is really meant to focus on price. Focus on the share count. Let's say you had 150 AMC. Remember, the first step, they're going to be reverse split. So that moves to the 15 AMC on this top row. Then the second step is you get your settlement. So here, if you divide 15 by 7.5, you would get 2 more reverse split AMC shares. So notice they're kind of worth 10 times the price now. So you end up, in this case, with 17 AMC shares after the reverse split. Now remember, there's no fractionals. So some people have asked me some questions on Twitter. It's like after the reverse split, this first, going from 150 to 15, say you owned 160 and that had, not 160, say you owned 155. So that would become 15.5. Well, that 0.5 is going to get paid out to you as cash. You're not going to end up with that 0.5 share. So just, if you want to do fractionals, just think about kind of you'd get cash for whatever doesn't round to a nice whole number. Same thing then when the settlement happens. Say you had 16 AMC or something like that. Divide by 7.5, you end up with this fractional share left over, and that's just going to get paid out as cash. There won't be any fractional shares. I'm not too concerned about that. You get your cash, maybe you save up and buy more shares in the future with that cash or something. That's going to be up to you. You'll have to decide what's right for you. If you don't want to have fractions with AMC, you got to think in groupings of 150. That's why I've shown this example. With APE, you got to think in groups of 10. So in this case, say you had 150 APE, I just have that example to kind of keep us even Steven here for those people who own 50-50. I understand some do, some don't. But anyway, so you'd end up with your 15 APE, and then really AMC. And so then combine those, and you get your 32 AMC. Sorry, I know I flew through that. If you're new to my channel or you haven't seen the other videos, just go to those. I go through it a lot more clearly and plainly in those. But the point is, if I'll go back on this sequence, this is what really matters. AMC gets reverse split. Then there's the common settlement dividend against only AMC common shares. And that's going to matter how many you own when this case finishes. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then your preferred shares kind of change so that basically APE gets reverse split as it converts into AMC. Okay, let's keep going with the filings. Hang in with me because by the end of this, I'm going to talk through sending your letters of support and objection, and I know a lot of people have asked me about that, so we're going to still come to that. There's kind of two things we want to think through. There's a class, remember this is a class action settlement, and then there's going to be like owners of record of the stock. So those two things are going to matter, and I've heard people in space calls on Twitter get a little bit confused about that too, and start to kind of muddy some things together. So first off, the class is just if any time from August 3rd until the end of this settlement you own AMC, you are part of the class. That's it. The class is AMC, not APE, AMC stockholders. And you can see it says here, between August 3rd through and including the record time on the business day prior to the conversion. So it's just all the way until the day before it converts, which is your clue, by the way, on what the record date is. So it's essentially like the day before they do the conversion and all that, they're going to kind of timestamp and they're going to take a snapshot effectively of what shares of AMC you own so they can figure out who gets this dividend. Kind of going to repeat that in a minute here, so I suppose I'm jumping ahead, but you should hear that language sounds a lot like how a dividend works. There's a record date, they look at how many shares you have, they figure out what your dividend's supposed to be. That's just kind of what that means. Okay, you don't need to do anything to receive your dividend if you're an AMC common shareholder. So I'm not speaking to anyone who only owns APE. Now you need to own AMC. If you own AMC, you're getting this dividend, and there's just a lot of language that says you don't have to do a darn thing. Just sit on your AMC. And it's like any other dividend. You don't do anything to get a dividend if you own, say, I don't know, Walmart stock or something like that. You just receive it, or Target. My wife likes Target a lot better than Walmart, so maybe we'll use that one. So that's all. You don't need to do anything to receive your dividend. Just that language is really black and white in there. Okay, I mentioned this. I guess I said I was jumping ahead, so here we are again. The settlement is for those who own, and I should have really said AMC, who own AMC at the date of record, and that's why it's kind of like a dividend. So you can see here, only record holders of common stock. And anytime you see common stock here, they mean AMC, right? We've got preferred equity shares, that's APE. We've got common shares, that's AMC. only record holders of the common stock as of the settlement class time will be entitled to it, blah, blah, blah. There's other stuff throughout the filing that kind of tells me that record date is basically at the end of this, this whole process. You can even see the settlement class time is set as of a time such that the reverse stock split, distribution of the settlement payment, and the conversion can be accomplished by AMC nearly contemporaneously. All right, let's demystify all this language. It's just saying we'll set the record date when AMC is ready to do everything. And then whatever shares you own, we'll figure out the math on what you're supposed to get. Okay? So good on that. So if you hear anybody saying, well, I think it's what you owned when APE was created, and that's why there's this like August 3rd and August 4th kind of stuff out there. No, it's just they did August 3rd because they're saying AMC holders were impacted by APE. So August 3rd is kind of the day before APE was created. So that's the day you were part of this class. If you're impacted, you're part of this class is what they're saying. By the way, when we get to kind of the whole settlement, support, objection, all that stuff, that's part of the consideration if you're an objector is some people are saying, you know, I never wanted you to represent me. I object to this whole thing. And I'm going to talk through, you know, where I land, whether I support, object, whatever. And I'm going to be real respectful because I totally get on this one. Boy, there's a lot of different points of view. You could object because you're, in fact, why don't I not betray my thinking on that yet? But I understand there's different points of view, and we'll go through that. Okay, I really want you to see that even the plaintiffs are going to document that the board had the right to give voting rights to APE. Let me say that again. Even the plaintiffs, you know, Allegheny, are going to document, and I think maybe they already have. I didn't go through their document because I've seen that one being used as some FUD already, and I'm just not worried about it. What I was more wondering is, okay, AMC was supposed to communicate to us how the settlement is happening, when the settlement is happening, all that, and how we can object and support. So that's why I read this document. But I'm going to give you the link to both. Anyway, so even the plaintiffs basically are saying, yep, the board had the right to give these voting rights. And here's the thing. I said that in other videos, even from the moment this case was created. I got trolled a little bit for that, and so I just want to kind of go back to, you know, I've said recently, in particular on Twitter, like it's time to start seeing who's credible and who's not, and to just choose which voices you listen to. So this is not, I'm not even going to spend much time on this. It's not some big dunk or something, but you can see this was on Reddit. So you can see it was 9 months ago, and I went on and on about how it had voting rights and all that. And the point is, Adam and team gave us all of the filings way back last August that told us exactly how APE was going to work, or really was it last July when they announced it. So you can see this DD from me was 9 months ago, and you can also see like at the top right here, here's the whole thing about the board had authority in 2013 to issue these things and could decide what rights each basically sort of series of these would have. And so then when they gave voting rights, they had the right to do all that. And that was as far back as 2013, which is long before any of us came along. So this predates all this stuff going on. That's also, by the way, the killer to the stupid Project Popcorn FUD, which, you know, if I'm just going to be real. For those who just want to listen to every allegation that gets tossed out there, that's what Shorty does. They sling mud, and then if you're going to go like, oh my gosh, that means people are dirty. Well, it's Shorty who's slinging the mud. So I don't know what to tell you. I don't listen to that stuff. I go back to the filings, and the filings tell me they had the right to this stuff in 2013, and it was voted on at that time. And they communicated to us when APE was created that it had voting rights. Like, this was just known. It was all out in the open. Okay. The lawyers for AMC put a lot of clear language about they are not admitting any guilt. AMC is not admitting guilt. And that's another point that, I felt even before they posted this, and I think I've talked about that at least on Twitter. There's some people who kind of want to say, well, why would he settle if he's not guilty? Well, the reason you settle is speed, not because you're guilty. They know this thing is going to drag on, it's going to cost millions of dollars in lawyer fees, and it's delaying, which is the reason Shorty does all kinds of lawsuits. It's delaying the time to get access to that capital. You've heard me talk a lot on this channel about access to capital. So you can see here, defendants want to avoid burden, expense, disruption, without admitting the validity of any allegations. And then in the next kind of section, defendants sort of have denied and continued to deny all of these claims. So they're still being clear, we deny all this, but we just want to move forward. And that's logical to me. That's very often businesses will settle cases just to move faster. It's almost cheaper to settle usually than even if you win, the cost of paying all the lawyers and the cost of all that time. So that's my point of view on that. That's the lawyer's point of view on that. Of course, yeah, those are AMC's lawyers, so I understand the counter argument to that, but I agree with it. Okay, if the settlement is approved, what I want you to know is things could happen fast. So keep paying attention to this court case timeline, all the dates and gates on this thing. And there's language here that even says, it kind of highlights just how fast it might go. So you can see I've kind of underscored some of this. Basically, the lawyers are saying, okay, we're probably going to have AMC pre-file some stuff for those 4 steps I told you, kind of the AMC reverse split and the settlement dividend and the preferred equity shares changing and the conversion itself. So AMC may even file with the NYSE. So you can see here, AMC is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, so's APE, and whatever this new QSIP and all that for our new shares will be also on the NYSE. And so what this is saying is, before the settlement's even done, you're going to see filings. So I want you to hear that now, because here's how that always goes for us apes. Someone drops on, I don't know, Twitter or YouTube because it's great clickbait. Oh my gosh, there's this new filing. Check this out. Whoa, breaking. Well, I'm already telling you now, there's going to be filings. They're probably just going to be sort of housekeeping and logistics and saying, here's how the stock is going to get created. And it's all going to match everything that I've been saying in 8 videos now. You're probably hearing me just sort of it's good humor, don't worry. But it's like, how many times can we talk about some of these filings that say the same things in just different ways? So I hope it's really landing. It's been very consistent from all parties involved what's happening. And so when we see some filings before the settlement's even done, that you're going to just kind of be chill and be like, okay, cool. They told us they were going to do this, and now they're doing this. This is nothing to get all worked up about. But we'll be seeing those coming. And I guess the real point is, once the settlement happens, they're already using language in these filings saying we're going to move fast. So just know that if the settlement is approved, things will move fast. We kind of talked about this earlier, but there was another section that really underscores all claims are released. Basically means they can't come back to this same case and kind of push on it again. So that'll be good in my opinion. Then there's just a whole section of language of just releasing anybody and everybody and their dog from all the claims here. All right, we're finally to the part where either if you want to support or object, I'm going to try to just be a little bit, I don't know what the word is. I'm not going to push too much of an agenda. I am going to tell you which one I'm going to do. Probably a lot of you, especially if you follow me on Twitter, you basically know already. But in case you disagree with me, I'm just going to give everyone the process here. So there's 3 ways you can support or object. You can do it in person, so we'll talk about that a little bit. You can do it over an email. That's nice. That's a little more user-friendly, let's say, this time. And you can do it in old school mail. So you can see here, settlement class members do not need to attend the hearing. The court will consider any submission made in accordance with the provisions below. I'm going to give you all those provisions. We're going to show you that. And just one thing to clear up too. There was a lot of language about objecting, and that is a normal process. AMC, because AMC has entered into this settlement, they have to be careful not to push too much themselves, and they have to stay sort of objective and give their shareholders a chance to object to this settlement. So if you see a lot of language in various postings and communications from AMC, and even the AMC Twitter account posted, and you see something there about objecting, but you don't see anything about supporting. And so there were some Twitter apes who said, oh, you can only object, you can't support. But there's a lot of language in the filing that also talks about support. You're totally able to support if that's what you want to do. So don't let anybody tell you that you can only object. You can object or you can support. And AMC is just kind of following the normal legal process in the way that they're wording that. So yeah, don't let anybody tell you that there's not support also. There absolutely is. You need to know that May 31st is the deadline to object or support. if you're going to send your letter in via email or paper mail, you need to do that by May 31st. So you can see on or before May 31, and you need to do each of the following things. So here we go. How do you submit? Well, first of all, where do you submit it to? So here you can see the email address. Again, I'm going to kind of link to these documents. You can go get this. Or there is, here's how you send it in the mail, and it's basically to their lawyers. So the email address is to their lawyers, and the mail address is to the AMC lawyers. There will be a process. I remember hearing this on the phone call when they kind of all talked about how this whole thing is going to go. I don't know, what is that, guys? 2.5 weeks or so ago. There will be a process for both sides to see these letters, because you cannot. Well, actually, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but let's just say we're going to have to prove that we own shares. All right, so what do you include? And I'll just say here, this is like follow the recipe. So if you see these, there's going to be 5 things. I think I've got one on the next slide just because it didn't really fit well. And some of you are on phones, so I wanted you to be able to read this. Okay, so just, it's like following a recipe, where it says, all right, add salt, add butter, whatever. So just, if this looks a little daunting and there's a lot of stuff, if you just follow it step by step, it's actually going to be pretty easy. And actually, I'm committed to, I'm going to go ahead and do my letter at some point here. And if I'm comfortable enough, and I probably will be, I'll just share it with you guys so people can kind of see how I wrote mine, I suppose, as an example. I don't think anyone needs to think about copy pasting. I'm not going to do any kind of template or form letters or whatever. But I know some on Twitter have kind of asked me just to try to help make this simple for everyone. And I get that. Like, let's simplify and go. Okay. So the first thing you got to do is you just basically need to say, this is about the case that we're talking about. So there's specific wording here. So you see that just means in regards, AMC, Entertainment Holdings, blah, 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 blah. Like, just literally that part you do copy paste. Like, make sure you have that in your letter. Okay, so then it says put your name, put your address, put your telephone number. So here I want to pause. By the way, and you see of the objector or supporter. So that's an example here where I was telling you there's a lot of language that makes it clear you can support, not just object. I understand that's a lot of personal information. And you're even going to have to give more in a minute here. I'm going to show you that you have to show that you own shares. So there's going to have to be some identifying of, the fact that you own shares. I am going to go ahead and do it. This stuff is going to the lawyers. It's going through the court. I believe it's a good process. This is not, I believe, like the last time where we were sending letters and they were getting scanned and they were public access. This is more for the lawyers and the judge to get a read around what overall is going on. And we have to prove that we own shares, and we have to prove we're a real person. That's the reason also they had that, I'm kind of forgetting the term, the special master or whatever it was, that other woman who's helping. She's going to be part of kind of reviewing all these letters. I know there's some apes out there today on Twitter who expressed concern, and their thought was, well, if we all send letters, boy, that's a lot for them to go through. Could that make it take a while? My thought is, if only one side, either the objectors or the supporters, only one side gets real vocal, I think that would be a shame too. So I personally feel like advocating for myself and for people who are like-minded with me and not giving up my voice. I'm going to keep my voice, and I'm going to send a letter in. You'll have to do you, but I think we should. I think it would be great. So think about that. But you will have to give personal information there. All right, third thing, you are going to have to sign it either by hand or electronically. Then fourth thing, you'll have to have your statement. Why do you object? Why do you support? What are your reasons for this? And if there were any kind of other filings you want them to have. So it's just like before, right? We sent letters. It's just now you got to be a little more formal. Last, just provide the documentation that you own shares. So they're kind of giving, actually this is even giving documentation you're just part of the class. But there is ways, I think, did I include that actually? Yeah, here we go. So you have to document that you can be an objector or supporter. And you have to document that you're part of the settlement class by having copies of a statement, a screenshot of your account, or an authorized statement from your broker containing transactions or holding information. So they're just saying one way or another, you got to show you had AMC in your account. Now remember, you're part of the class if you owned AMC anytime from August 3rd until whenever you send in the letter. It's a whole separate thing. You're only getting the settlement if you own shares at the end of this thing. Remember, so I'm kind of repeating that. So you will have to kind of give your name, your phone number, your address, and some kind of screenshot of your brokerage account. I'm thinking personally, if you don't want to give your total shares, you could black out all but the last 1 or 2 digits or whatever, depending on kind of how many shares you want to reveal. That's something I'm strongly considering. I know some have said, hey, this is a great way to get a share count. I don't know that I personally love that idea. That's just asking for a whole new court case, because if we give some bonkers share count in the end and prove that we own 5 times the float or something, I got a feeling that means the ticker gets suspended or something. I don't know that that's true at all. I'm making that up. That's not DD right there. That's me. So I don't know that I'm really focused on giving them my total share count to the court. That's not what this court does anyway. This court is strictly going to focus on the settlement at hand and the court case at hand. So if you want to show your whole shares and you want this court to get a share count, I can understand the point. I get where that's coming from. I'm not sure yet that that's what I'm going to do. So I'm also speaking to the people who may be uncomfortable showing your total share count. I'm just going to suggest that we could black out all but the last couple digits or something. It still proves that you have shares, and that's the point. You got to prove you have shares. Okay. No anonymous letters. They've made that really clear. I already told you got to give your name, and it has to be your legal name, and you got to give your contact information. I say no matter how funny. We had that Shlomo one that I thought was pretty funny. If you didn't catch, that was a total parody letter, in my opinion. Someone was pointing out just the insanity of some of the YouTube accounts, and you can go find that Shlomo letter. It's out there. I thought they did a great job. I thought that was pretty funny, and I thought it made the point that there's some pretty ridiculous people out there. And some of the ridiculousness I think is just intentional, and some is maybe not intentional. I don't know. So you won't be able to do anonymous letters. They won't even count. They won't include them. You just aren't going to use them. Just know that. Now, if you wanted to attend in person, carefully listen to this. You don't need to attend to have your letter count, but you can't attend without sending a letter. If you want to attend, you need to have written that letter through the email or through paper mail, and you need to do it on or before May 31st. So you don't need to attend to write, but you can't attend if you don't write. Hope that makes sense. Now, I do notice this is talking about the objection, so I'm going to try to find out for myself, can you attend in support? I'm going back and forth on that. I don't, it doesn't really fit in my budget right now to go all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast, but I'm still playing around with the idea. I like the thought of us having some vocal apes. I guess I've just kind of tipped my hand that I'm going to write in support, so I'll talk about that more in a minute. But I'm just admitting here, I just sort of see language about attending to present your objection. So hopefully some people could attend to present their support too. I don't know. We'll see. So bottom line thoughts. I guess I didn't jump too far ahead on that. Here's why I'm going to support. But again, I hope if you're an objector, you are going to hear kind of some respect from me on this. Initially, I just wanted the whole case thrown out. And you can go back to some of my first videos when the case even kind of was introduced on why I felt this was a case lacking any merit whatsoever. And, ultimately the argument on that is, the trolls never liked to admit what the common share vote was. So this case is saying that basically AMC common share holders didn't want any of this. But if you look at the common share vote that we had at the proxy, it was almost 3-1 in favor. Forget ape. People like to say, I see it on Twitter a lot, especially the trolls, and the people working for Shorty, that AMC stuffed the ballot with ape and the whole Antara deal and the mirrored votes with computer share and all of that stuff. But you can throw out every single ape vote there was. Just ignore ape. The common shares voted in favor. And so to me, it's like, just throw the whole case out and let's move on. That said, there's two reasons that it's still really interesting to support this for me. I'm going to speak for myself, and you can just decide, agree or disagree. The first is this settlement is being given as a dividend. I keep calling it that. Let's review real quick. One person tried to challenge me and say, well, wait, it's dilution. By the definition of it, there are more shares, so the value of AMC is spread out across more shares. That's the definition of dilution. However, normally when there's more shares, those are sold into the market, and you yourself are not getting those shares. In this case, it's being given as a dividend to the current existing shareholders. So there's not dilution of your portfolio. The percent of the company you own before this settlement and the percent of the company you own after is actually the same. So your piece of the market cap does not change. It's therefore not dilutive. I hope that's clear. I kind of talk more about that in some of the other settlement videos. So because it's a dividend, because it's not dilutive, there's an interesting thought. Let's go back to that. Well, what if we own 5 times the float or 10 times the float or 2 times the float or whatever? What that means is AMC is going to give out 6.9 million of these post-reverse split AMC. That's the dividend. It's about 6.9 million post-reverse split AMC shares. What if we all owned enough that there should have been like 8 million or 9 million or 10 million? That's going to get really interesting because someone's got to go find those. You're going to get your dividend of these shares. But let's say they get handed out and ComputerShare is going to distribute them to our brokers. And let's say my broker goes, hey, I'm supposed to give this guy, I'm going to just make up a number here, guys. It has nothing to do with how many shares I own. I just want round numbers. I'm supposed to give this guy 10 of these things, but you only gave me 7. And then ComputerShare is going to say, yeah, sorry, we handed them all out. That's all we had left for you. Well, my broker is going to make sure I get my shares. And so they're going to kind of be working on getting those delivered and all that. Someone somewhere, and really, honestly, it's Shorty. What's going to really happen is Shorty is going to owe me a few extra shares if what I had bought was some shares that had gotten sold short. Ultimately, when a dividend goes through, that's why some people have long wanted a cash dividend from AMC. It's the shorts who receive the dividend but actually have to pass it through to you who own the shares long. Well, what if they shorted, again, in this case, they shorted more than, they shorted 10 effectively, but they received 7. They owe me another 3. They got to go find those and buy those and deliver them to me. It would be really, really interesting if suddenly Shorty was having to go buy a bunch of shares to deliver me my dividend. That's a lot of buying pressure on AMC and a lot of cost pressure on Shorty. Could get interesting. I'm making up a wild scenario there. I am. Totally admit that. I happen to believe we own more than the float. So if you believe that, then what this dividend could mean is a lot of pressure on the shorts. I do not want to spread hopium. I am not saying it's going to take us to the moon that day or anything like that. But I am saying, boy, that's an interesting thought. And I'm just leaving it with that word interesting. It's not a prediction. I'm not saying it will happen. You notice I'm not talking price. I'm not talking dates. It's just going to be really interesting if we own more than the float, because there won't be enough shares given out at the dividend, but we're still all somehow going to get our shares. The mechanics of that will be interesting. So that's totally separate from all these points. I guess I just rambled off the slide here. Let's come back to on a more practical level. Why do I support this? So the first thing is I want us to just move on. I'm really tired of delays. I'm really tired of this thing getting dragged on. I'm really tired of arguing about it. I just want to move on. I want to get this thing done with speed. So I'm in support because even though I'd like the case thrown out, if this settlement is not reached, what is more likely is the case kind of keeps going. I don't think it gets thrown out. So I'm not going to object on the grounds of saying I want the case thrown out and risk that the case is not thrown out, but also now the settlement is gone. That's the worst of all 3 scenarios. Because there's really 3, right? One is the settlement happens, one is the case is thrown out, and one is no settlement and the case keeps going. I don't want to personally risk that scenario, so I'm just going to support this settlement. And then if it is, if the settlement was, enough people objected and it didn't happen, then honestly, I think this just causes further delay and further expense, and it lets Shorty just string this thing out some more and cause all kinds of problems. So that's another reason why I'm just supporting it. And then, um, these guys have said clearly they're not guilty. And so I'm comfortable with the fact that all the claims get thrown out, and we don't have to be talking about that either. So for the fact that we throw out the claims, we move on from the case, the conversion can happen, we don't risk delaying, I'm just in. I'm going to support this. I'll probably word it, though, with both. That's what I did, by the way, in my last letter before all of this. I basically said I wanted the case thrown out. If it can't be thrown out, then I want this settlement. But either way, I want this thing done. And so I'll probably kind of do that again. Finally, just focus. Actually, let me go back before I move on to what matters. Like I said, I'll probably do kind of a sample letter at some point and share that with you guys. I think, whatever community you're in, share with each other. Share each other's sample letters. Sometimes I find those kind of motivational, right? Like I learn things about other apes, what you're going through, why you're in this movement, what you care about. And I think the world needs to hear us. I think it's a time where we get to kind of share with the world what's really going on. So you see the opportunity. All right, but also let's focus on what matters. All these court cases, all these legal documents, in the end, is AMC making money or not? That's what matters to me. So let's just look at a couple of metrics real quick. Some of these, you've seen from me a lot, so I'm just going to go through them quickly. Look at year over year. This is from today, right before the video. I went and got this from Box Office Mojo. If you're on Twitter, you probably see a lot of people sharing that these days, and I'm glad for that. Let's multiply. I know I've shared that for a long time on YouTube, and I'm glad to see more people are looking at it now. I think that's really good for us all to understand what's going on. But look at, we're $715 million ahead of last year. We're only at the beginning of May. So we're basically only a third of the way through the year, and already $715 million at the domestic box office ahead of last year. And remember, that's not just ticket sales. That represents more traffic. More traffic means more merch sales and more food and beverage sales too. So we're crushing it. April was, I think, the third biggest April of all time. Now that's this quarter, right? We just had the Q1 earnings call. I thought it was great. A little plug for myself on forecasting. I was actually really close on a lot of things. I'll try to do a recap video soon on Q1 earnings. But, I thought Q1 was basically, just where I thought it was going to be. Like, it wasn't like a home run, but it was great. And it was where I thought it would be, and we're on track. So that made me very happy. And then, since then, we've had April be the third biggest April of all time. Well, that was not part of what Adam shared in the Q1 earnings. Q1's January through March. So we just finished this awesome April. We're in the middle of an awesome May. Look on the right at what movies are coming. I know I've shown that a lot, so I won't belabor the point. But here, we're in the middle of Guardians has just launched. We got all these other huge blockbusters coming just in the next basically 5 weeks. And if I ran this out through the end of Q2, then there's even more. Like you get the Flash and some other stuff too. We are doing awesome. Like the industry is up and to the right. It's going really great. So I'd say focus on that. Here's the links. I know you can't just click on these. I wish you could. So I will put these in the notes of the video. Yeah. I would just really say things are going great. I truly believe this case is going to get behind us. Shorty wants to dishearten you and discourage you. So this is where I keep saying, and they want to confuse you, which also ends up kind of disheartening and discouraging you. So if you see people who are consistently sharing weird messages, wrong messages, incorrect information, start to decide you don't have to listen to those. Even if they are maybe a big account, whether that's on YouTube or Twitter or Telegram or Facebook or Reddit, and it's like this, they're a big account, so you think they'd have credibility, but they keep saying wrong stuff. Don't give them credibility. Don't listen to them. And even if there's some small account, you probably have people in your mind that you're thinking of right now who you've been like, man, they only have 50 followers, but they just keep getting everything right. Great. Listen to them. I think it's time for us to really think through who are the voices of credibility, who are the voices of sort of confusion and doubt and chaos, and to start cleaning things up and listening to positive messages, positive apes, people who get stuff right. And ultimately, even if you don't want to listen to anybody, focus on the numbers, because all you need is your own conviction. You don't need other people to tell you. You just go to this website and see these kind of numbers for yourself and trust yourself, because you got this. So let's go.